Your heart is pounding, and there is no danger anywhere in the room. No fire, no threat, nothing chasing you. Just a phone on the nightstand, a message you haven't replied to, and a mind that will not stop running through worst-case scenarios at 11 at night. It feels like something is wrong with you, like your nervous system has a fault somewhere, a wire crossed, a setting stuck on high alert for no good reason. But that may not be what is really happening. Anxiety is one of the most common human experiences and one of the most misunderstood. Most people assume it means their mind is malfunctioning, working against them, punishing them for no reason. What if the opposite is closer to the truth? What if the system causing you so much discomfort is not broken at all, but doing exactly the job it was built to do in an environment it was never designed for? To understand why, you have to look further back than your last stressful week, further back than childhood, back to the conditions your brain actually evolved to survive. For most of human history, life was short, unpredictable, and genuinely dangerous. Predators, starvation, disease, sudden violence from rival groups. In that world, a nervous system that reacted instantly to uncertainty had an enormous advantage over one that stayed calm and waited for proof. The version of the human mind that hesitated, that needed solid evidence before reacting, often did not survive long enough to pass anything on. The anxious ones did. This is where evolutionary psychiatrist Randolph Nesse's idea of the smoke detector principle becomes useful. A good smoke detector is not built to be accurate. It is built to be cautious. It will happily go off for burnt toast 100 times if it means it never misses an actual fire once. A slightly oversensitive alarm costs you a moment of irritation. An alarm that is too relaxed can cost you everything. Nature does not optimize for your comfort, it optimizes for your survival, even at the cost of frequent false alarms. Your anxiety works on the same logic. It would rather interrupt you unnecessarily 1,000 times than miss one genuine threat. You've probably noticed this yourself, even if you never had language for it. The tight chest before opening an email from your boss, the racing pulse before a difficult phone call, the spiral of what-ifs before a presentation that, deep down, you know will probably go fine. None of these things can actually kill you, but your body responds as though they might. That gap between what actually threatens you now and what your body still reacts to as though it were ancient danger has a name. Researchers call it evolutionary mismatch. Your biology was shaped by an environment that no longer exists, and it has not caught up to the one you actually live in. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux spent much of his career studying exactly how this happens inside the brain. His research on the amygdala, a small structure buried deep in the brain, helped show that this region can trigger a fear response before the more thoughtful, reasoning parts of your brain even finish processing what is happening. Speed was the priority. In a genuine emergency, thinking too long before reacting could be fatal, so the brain built a shortcut. React first, explain later, if there is time. That shortcut still exists, it still fires, but it cannot always tell the difference between a predator in the grass and a message from your boss that simply says, "Can we talk?" To an ancient threat detection system, uncertainty itself can be enough to trigger the alarm, regardless of whether anything is actually dangerous. It's worth pausing on a complication here because the story is not quite as simple as ancient brain versus modern world. Not everyone experiences anxiety with the same intensity, and evolutionary mismatch alone does not explain that variation. Genetics play a role, early life experience plays a role, chronic stress, trauma, and even things like sleep and diet can all shift how sensitive this alarm system becomes. Evolutionary mismatch helps explain why the system exists and why it is so easily triggered in general. It does not mean every instance of anxiety has the exact same cause, or that biology is the only factor worth considering. Two people can inherit a similar underlying alarm system and still end up with very different relationships to their own anxiety, depending on everything else that happens to them along the way. This becomes even clearer once you consider what counted as danger for most of human history. It was not only physical threats. For nearly the entire span of human evolution, people lived in small, interdependent groups, and survival depended heavily on staying connected to that group. Exclusion was not only uncomfortable, it could mean losing access to food, protection, and support. In that context, social rejection carried real survival weight. That's part of why modern social anxiety can feel disproportionately intense. Being left out of a conversation, misreading a friend's tone, worrying that someone is annoyed with you, none of these things can threaten your physical survival today, but the underlying alarm system was shaped in a world where they very well might have. Consider how many of your own anxious moments actually fit this pattern once you start looking for it. Rereading a text message 5 times, searching for a tone that might not even be there. Rehearsing a conversation with a colleague who seemed slightly short with you long after the conversation has ended. Feeling a flicker of dread before checking a group chat you were briefly excluded from. None of these are rational in the way they can feel from the inside. They are an ancient exclusion detection system doing exactly what it has always done, just aimed at situations with far lower stakes than the ones it was built for. Modern life adds a further complication your ancestors never had to deal with. Their alarm system got moments of rest. A threat would pass, and the body would eventually settle. Your alarm system today faces a near-constant stream of low-level uncertainty. Notifications, unread messages, unclear expectations at work. A newsfeed engineered to hold your attention by keeping you slightly unsettled. The alarm was built for occasional bursts of danger, followed by recovery. It was not built for a world that rarely lets it fully stand down. It is tempting, once you understand this, to try and simply reason your way out of anxiety. If you know the threat isn't real, why can't you just calm down? This is where the work of stress researcher Robert Sapolsky becomes relevant. His work on the biology of stress illustrates how physiological stress responses, once triggered, do not switch off simply because you intellectually recognize there is no danger. The body's alarm systems operate largely outside conscious control. Telling yourself to relax while your nervous system is already activated is a bit like shouting instructions at a smoke detector while it is still ringing. Understanding the danger isn't real doesn't automatically switch the alarm off, because the alarm was never designed to wait for permission from your rational mind in the first place. This is not a flaw unique to you. It is closer to a shared inheritance. Every person walking around today carries a nervous system built by ancestors who survived long enough to reproduce, in part because their anxiety worked. You are, in a very real sense, descended of warriors. There is something quietly reassuring in that, even if it doesn't make the racing heart at 11 at night feel any better in the moment. The problem was never that your mind is defective. The problem is a mismatch in timing. Your alarm system evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. The modern world, full of emails, notifications, ambiguous messages, and constant low-level social evaluation, changed far faster than any nervous system could adapt to. None of this means you are simply at the mercy of an ancient alarm you cannot influence at all. Understanding what the system is trying to do gives you something more useful than blame. It gives you a way to work with it instead of constantly fighting it. One practical place to begin is learning to name what is actually happening in the moment the alarm fires. When you notice your chest tighten or your thoughts start racing over something that is not an immediate physical threat, try mentally labeling it. This is my alarm reacting to uncertainty, not to a genuine emergency right now. This isn't about talking yourself out of the feeling entirely, and it likely won't switch it off instantly. What it does is engage the more reflective parts of your brain alongside the reactive ones, giving you a small amount of space between the alarm and your response to it. Over time, this kind of labeling has been associated with a reduction in the intensity of the stress response, not because the alarm stops firing, but because you stop treating every alarm as unquestionable truth. Expect this to be inconsistent. Some days, the labeling will barely register against a strong wave of anxiety, and that is normal rather than a sign you are doing it wrong. The goal isn't to eliminate the alarm. An alarm system that never activates would be far more dangerous than one that occasionally overreacts. The goal is simply to stop mistaking every activation for proof that something is deeply wrong with you. It also helps to notice when the alarm has genuinely done its job. Once you've registered the discomfort, asked whether there is an actual present threat, and named what is really happening, you don't need to keep re-triggering the same alarm by replaying the scenario over and over. That repetition, going back over the same worry again and again, is not the alarm protecting you anymore. It's closer to checking a smoke detector that has already been switched off, just to make sure it is definitely really off. Recognizing that difference between the alarm doing useful work and the alarm looping without new information is often where people start to notice some relief, not because the anxiety disappears entirely, but because they stop adding a second layer of struggle on top of the first. If anxiety in your life is frequent, intense, or making it difficult to function day to day, understanding its evolutionary origins is not a substitute for support. A therapist or doctor can help distinguish an overactive but healthy alarm system from something that may benefit from more targeted treatment. Understanding why the system exists is a starting point, not a complete solution on its own. Your anxiety is not evidence of weakness or a mind working against you. It is evidence of an ancient, highly effective survival system, operating a little out of step with the century you happen to live in. Your heart is still pounding. There is still no fire in the room. But maybe the question was never, what is wrong with you? Maybe it was always, what is this system still trying to protect you from, even now, even here?